of El Al Flight 1862. On October 4, 1992, a Boeing 747-200 cargo aircraft operated by El Al took off from John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York. The flight was bound for Ben Gurion International Airport in Tel Aviv, with a scheduled stop at Amsterdam's Schiphol Airport for a crew change and cargo processing. Serious concerns surrounded Flight 1862 even before it left the ground. The aircraft, built in 1979, was in poor condition and scheduled for major maintenance shortly after this flight. U.S. aviation authorities in New York had initially refused to clear the plane for takeoff due to safety concerns. One of the key issues was that El Al had failed to maintain the aircraft according to Boeing's maintenance guidelines. As a result, hairline cracks in the engine's fuse pins went unnoticed, flaws that would cause serious problems later that day. The flight to Amsterdam appeared uneventful. The aircraft landed at Schiphol Airport at 2:40 p.m., right on schedule. But during the transatlantic crossing, the crew reported several technical issues: fluctuations in the autopilot speed controller, malfunctions in the shortwave radio, and irregular voltage readings from Generator 3. A standard maintenance check was performed, and the reported issues were temporarily fixed, allowing the aircraft to continue its journey. The aircraft was refueled, and Customs approved the new cargo load, which included items such as flowers, perfume, and video recorders, although it was later revealed that the cargo had not been physically inspected. With the aircraft ready for the next leg of its journey, the crew prepared for takeoff. Originally scheduled to depart at 5:30 p.m., the flight was delayed and rescheduled for 6:20 p.m. While awaiting clearance, the crew settled into their routine. Having arrived earlier on a previous El Al flight, they had taken 20 hours of rest before reporting for duty. The captain for this flight was Yitzhak Fuchs, 59 years old, an experienced pilot with over 25,000 flight hours. He had flown fighter jets for the Israeli Air Force in the late 1950s and had accumulated 9,500 hours on the Boeing 747. Seated next to him was First Officer Arnon Ohad, 32 years old, with almost 4,300 total flight hours, including 612 hours on the Boeing 747. In the third seat sat flight engineer Gedalia Sofer, 61 years old, the most experienced crew member with over 26,000 flight hours.
The paid partner of today's video is BetterHelp, the world's largest online therapy service. BetterHelp is a platform where therapists and their clients can communicate effectively and get the most out of therapy. We've all had moments where life feels overwhelming. It's in times like those when having someone to talk to, a trained professional who truly listens, can make all the difference. With a large network of credentialed therapists, BetterHelp makes it easy to find someone who understands your unique needs and who can help you with a wide range of personal challenges. You get the same quality as in-office therapy with the convenience of communicating how and when you want, by phone, video, or messaging. You can switch therapists at any point if you don't feel you're getting enough benefit. And with a 4.5-star rating on Trustpilot, you can feel confident in the quality of care you will receive. Ready to take that next step toward better mental well-being? Visit betterhelp.com/aircrashinvestigation or select Aircrash Investigation at sign-up to get a special discount on your first month of therapy.
Also on board was 23-year-old Anat Solomon, an El Al employee based in Amsterdam. Though not part of the crew, she traveled back to Tel Aviv to reunite with her fiancé. At 6:04, clearance for pushback was requested, and once received, the aircraft slowly rolled backwards as its 4 Pratt & Whitney engines came to life. For this leg of the flight, the first officer was designated as the pilot flying, while the captain served as the pilot monitoring, handling communications and checklists. With the engines running, the aircraft began taxiing toward the runway. It was an unusually calm autumn evening in Amsterdam. October weather is typically harsh in the Netherlands, but tonight was different. The air was still, with a light northeasterly breeze, and visibility was clear. At 6:21, despite a 52-minute delay, the Boeing began its takeoff roll. The engines roared as the plane accelerated down the runway, lifting off for what should have been a routine flight to Tel Aviv. The aircraft climbed steadily, banking eastward to follow the Pampas departure route. No anomalies were evident during the initial climb, and everything seemed routine as evening fell over Amsterdam. But just a few minutes after takeoff, everything changed. A loud bang rang through the cockpit as the aircraft veered sharply to the right. Something was wrong. Had they hit something? Far below, at a lake east of Amsterdam, boaters looked up in confusion, startled by the noise. Two large objects tumbled from the sky, and moments later, two distant heavy splashes echoed across the water. As they stared at the aircraft, still trying to make sense of what they had just seen, the realization slowly kicked in. The Boeing 747 had just lost two of its engines and was now circling back toward Amsterdam, clearly in trouble and struggling to maintain control. But how could two engines break off? Each engine was secured to the wing by four critical components, fuse pins. These 14-centimeter-long safety pins were designed to break under extreme stress, such as in the event of a structural overload, to minimize damage to the wing. However, due to metal fatigue, one of the pins on engine number 3 developed a tiny 4-millimeter crack. The crack was barely visible to the naked eye and went unnoticed during inspection. When this pin snapped, the sudden load shift proved too much for the remaining 3 pins, causing them to fail in quick succession. The detachment was violent. As engine number 3 twisted outward, it slammed into engine number 4, tearing it from the wing. The impact caused severe damage to the wing, hydraulic and flap systems, making the aircraft significantly harder to control. The captain immediately took control of the aircraft, doing everything he could to keep it in the air as it continued its sharp roll to the right. Fuel poured from the damaged wing as the aircraft struggled to maintain altitude.
Hello, 1862, mayday, mayday, we have an emergency. Hello, 1862, do you wish to return to Schiphol? Mayday, mayday, mayday. Turn right heading 260, field behind you in your to the west, distance 18 miles. Roger, we have fire on engine number 3, we have fire on engine number 3. Roger, heading 270 downwind. 270 downwind. Tower 1862, surface wind 040 at 21 knots. Roger. Hello, 1862, north number 3 and number 4 engine. Number 3 and number 4 engine. Roger, 1862.
It seemed that air traffic control didn't understand the full severity of the situation. Controllers at Schiphol assumed that 2 engines had simply failed, not that both right-wing engines had fallen off. The confusion wasn't limited to air traffic control. The crew likely hadn't realized this either. In the chaos of those critical moments, with numerous tasks demanding their attention, they were probably unaware of the full extent of the damage. This was partly due to the limited visibility from the cockpit. The outer engine was barely visible, while the inner one was completely out of sight. Checking the engine parameters didn't help either, as they did not indicate that the engines had detached, only that they had lost thrust, since there was no system to warn of such a failure. To make matters worse, the aircraft was a cargo flight, so there were no passengers on board to alert the crew to the severity of the situation.
What will be runway in use for me at Amsterdam? Runway 06 in use, surface wind 040 at 21 knots, QNH 1012. You're request 27 for landing.
Amid the chaos, the first officer asked air traffic control which runway was available for an emergency landing. They advised that runway 06, oriented northeast, was in use, with winds at 040 degrees at 21 knots. However, the first officer requested permission to land on runway 27, which pointed west. This decision raised questions. While this runway was the longest and closest, it also meant approaching with a strong tailwind, complicating the landing. The reason the captain chose this runway remains unclear. Some speculated it was because runway 27 was closer to the aircraft's current position. Others suggested he may have opted for it because El Al's cargo hangar was located near that runway, potentially allowing for a quicker emergency response. In any case, air traffic control acknowledged the request and instructed the crew to switch to shiphole approach control. Time was running out, and the crew had to get the plane on the ground as quickly as possible.
Shiphole 1862, we have an emergency, we'll have 3 and 4 LL 1862, roger, copied about your emergency, contact 118.4 for your lineup. 118.4, bye. Shiphole LL 1862, we have an emergency, number 3 and number 4 engine in operative, request 27 for landing. Request 27, in that case, heading 36, heading 22 towers, repeat on 1012, mind the wind is 050 west. Roger, can you say again the wind, please? 050 west. Roger. What's heading for runway 27? Heading 360, heading 360, and then if you a right turn on, cross the localizer first. I have only 7 miles to go from present position. Roger, 36, copy.
Because the aircraft was too high and close to the airport for a direct landing, the controller had no choice but to route the flight onto a 360-degree loop directly over Amsterdam. This maneuver would allow the aircraft to gradually lose